I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you just fine. Thank you. All right, I just want to welcome everyone here to the podcast today. Our topic is going to be on bullying. I have two guest speakers, Detective Jeff Spitz from the East Lansing PD. He's been with the department for quite a few years now. And also have Mr. Craig Preethers, who's a LCC counselor. He's been in higher education for over 30 years, and he's seen over 30,000 students. So, Detective Spitz, I'll start with you, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into our topic.
Good morning, everybody. I've been an officer about 17 years now. I work at East Lansing Department, as he said. My position in East Lansing is detective. However, I'm also a school liaison officer. What that means is I stop by the schools just to make sure that there's nothing that the department can help them out or any problem they need us to assist them with. And I just make contact with them about once or twice a week just to see how things are going.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bender, I'm getting an echo.
And I'm not sure if everybody has, well, the classrooms are muted, but if you're not talking, then just go ahead and just click the mute button right at where the little speaker is, and then you shouldn't get that echoing. It might be because somebody doesn't have on headphones.
So all I'm saying is getting an echo everything I say.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have on headsets?
Yes.
All right. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll turn mine. I might be a little hot, so I'll try to turn mine down a little bit. Okay. With that said, Mr. Preethers, would you like to talk a little bit about yourself? Then I'm going to show you guys a little video clip, and then we'll get right into our topic.
Sure. Well, if everyone can hear me, that's great. And if you were to ask me yesterday what a podcast was, I wouldn't have had a clue. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do with this. I'm talking into this thing that looks like a sponge with a wire on the end of it. And I'm staring at pictures of deer and turkey on my walls in my office. So forgive me if I I'm not too polished at this. But at any rate, I've been at LCC for 23 years, and I think in that time I've talked to probably 25 or 30,000 students. And I was telling Mr. Bender that the more I talk to people, the more I realize the less that I truly know. And I'm also a pole vaulter. I compete in masters track and field, so I love to do that. And I'm thankful to be able to talk to you guys, so hopefully it'll all pan out, and I'll have some insights for you, and I hope we have a good day in class as well. So thanks.
Well, Mr. Preethers didn't tell you guys about himself. I was hoping he'd tell this story, but it's quite interesting. He holds a state record for killing the biggest buck with a knife. And it's quite an interesting story, so if you ever have to come down to LCC and stop in the counseling department, make sure you get to meet him. He's a very interesting fella. So what I want to do right now is just show you guys a little video. And so just stand by, you're going to see the screen is going to change.
A bullying victim has become an internet hero after he turned the tables on his tormentor. Take a look, it was all caught on tape on Monday. Casey Haynes, the bigger boy on the right, is seen being punched several times by a smaller boy. Suddenly though, Casey then just body slams the other boy and sending the other boy scampering off. The video's gone viral, and a Facebook page supporting Casey has more than 45,000 fans.
As I was researching this topic, I really wanted to show that video because, that's what we all think of bullying is. And what I did today is I brought these two experts here to talk to us a little bit about bullying and how bullying can affect us psychologically, emotionally, even criminally. And what I want to do right now is I want the two classes, if you can, just take a poll for me. If you notice in the left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a little poll. It looks like somebody's already taken it. I'm not sure how many students you have, but just click on one of the radio buttons of how many folks have been a victim or know someone who has been bullied before. If you can do that poll for me. And you guest speakers can do that too if you want. It's just a little poll there. And I'm going to broadcast these results because I think this is a topic worth discussing. I'm hoping it is. Okay, so there's our results. I mean, if you look at it, minimum 6, wow, 20 or more. So we got quite a few ranges here. 1 to 5, that means everybody would know somebody out of all you guys polling. And this is such a serious topic. So I want to ask the two guest speakers, and we'll start with Detective Spitz. What exactly is bullying from the perspective of a law enforcement officer?
Mr. Bender, bullying, can you hear me? Am I coming
Yeah,
through?
we can hear you just fine. I'm muting so that I won't give you that feedback.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Bullying is really a range of behaviors. It's both verbal and physical. Bullies intimidate others, and it often leads to antisocial and unlawful acts. It's a deliberate, hurtful behavior. The behavior is often repeated. That's pretty much the key, is that it's not just one incident where somebody calls somebody a name or whatever. It's repeated over and over again over a period of time. And often those being bullied, it's difficult for them to defend themselves. Some ways that they bully other people are by calling them names, saying or writing nasty things about them, leaving them out of activities, not talking to them, threatening them, making them feel uncomfortable or scared, taking or damaging their things, hitting or kicking them, or making them do things they don't want to do.
Sure. What I don't think bullying's anything new. I mean, I think it's been around from the beginning of time. And as I think about it, probably the one way it's changed significantly is it can happen now over the internet or through texting or those types of things. And it can be more damaging in a sense because maybe it's just not you and one other person in the classroom. Maybe it's not a kid picking on you in the classroom anymore by what he says or how he looks at you or what he does physically or what he or she does. But now it can be, it could be on Facebook, it could be all over the place, and I suppose the impact of that is even greater when a larger number of people are involved in it. Oftentimes the bully's the person that's really got the serious issue. So I'll shut up on that point.
Well, what I was trying to get from you, because you're going to go into some of our questions we have a little further down, but what are some of those long-term effects? What can it do to a student or a young person?
Sure.
How, later on in life? I mean, you have close to over 30,000 people you've done counseling sessions with, and what kind of long-term effects does this have? The bullying has on them.
Okay, well, there's no doubt that whatever people say to you or do, or whether it's in writing or whatever, can have long-term effects. I mean, people can withdraw. They can repeat the same behaviors to other individuals. Maybe there's an inability to love or have loving relationships down the road. They can get involved in crime, lower self-worth, and lack of trust.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Detective Spitz, do you know, especially being in the school, how does this impact students and victims? I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with lots of victims of various types of crimes. How does this impact victims and students?
Bullying in law enforcement, the way we deal with it usually is a result of when it becomes like an assault, or unfortunately sometimes in death investigations, because bullying can actually lead to suicide. Obviously, as people are getting bullied, their confidence and their feelings about themselves are usually diminished, and sometimes, like I said, it leads to suicide. So a lot of times when we're doing death investigations, we'll find notes or stuff on their computer where they'd been bullied in the past, and quite often is a contributing factor to them taking their own lives. In addition to, obviously, like I said before, we get respond to police, or the police department responds to schools because somebody got assaulted, they got hit, they got kicked, and when it's an ongoing situation over and over again, and obviously we really look at the
Okay,
bullying.
let's just go into my next area that I'm looking at. What do you think we can do as a community, and what advice would you give to help reduce? And I'm talking more of like the bullying we saw in the video, this physical type. And do you think bullies are born that way, or is it learned behavior? And I'm going to ask that question to Craig as well.
Okay. No, I'm getting it out too, James, when I'm talking. Okay, maybe that's better. Well, really, and after talking to so many people about so many topics over all the years, I firmly believe that the family has the biggest impact on people's behaviors. And you ask if it's innate or it's learned behavior. I think we have certain innate moral guidelines that are in us, or a conscience, as people refer to. But I firmly believe that how we turn out as individuals is greatly impacted by our family structure. And so, these are sensitive topics, but issues of divorce have a huge impact on people, and a lot of students I talk to that are from broken homes, they have the greatest struggles academically, and those are the types of factors that can lead to disruptive behavior in society. Another thing which would seem kind of abstract, but I really believe it's true, is that the types of TV shows that are on now, there's a disrespect for human life. The shows are very graphic. People aren't treated well. There's a lot of blood and gore. And I think all those issues diminish our value of human life and how we perceive others. And so really it starts in the home, how we treat our wives, how we treat our boyfriends, our girlfriends, how we treat our children, how we respect our parents. And those are abstract things, but they're the realities of what I see in my profession. And how do you get around the societal part of it? I don't know. You have to decide what you're going to expose yourself to and what you're not going to expose yourself to. And the other thing is, there's two issues that I see. One is self-esteem and self-worth, and we're pushing a lot in society self-esteem, but I'm not sure that's the issue, because in a sense, esteem is something we earn, but self-worth is something I think we're born with, that we are worthy as human beings. So those are just topics in a nutshell, without being extremely specific. But yes, some of it's innate, who we are, and some of it's learned.
Detective Spitz, any advice on how we can reduce this behavior in our communities? Some things you would talk to students about specifically?
Well, I think we're starting to do a good job with, I think a big thing with preventing bullying is education. And you're starting to see a lot more commercials and programs on TV that are touching on that subject. People need to realize that, they have to understand what bullying truly is. Because some people may not know. They may turn around and think, well, I'm just trying to be this guy's friend, so that's how I do it. I pick on him all the time, or I pick on her all the time, and without really looking at the individual that it's affecting, and focusing on how they, are perceiving your actions. In addition, I think we need to start, focusing on dealing with bullying at, very young age, so that a lot of the young students, and I'm talking, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, they need to understand that from a very young age that they have certain rights, and they have ways that they should be treated and ways they shouldn't be treated. They also need to understand that, there's a difference between, reporting that they're being bullied and tattling, because obviously if something real minor is to occur, somebody just looks at them funny once, that's not something to go, tell the teacher right away about and say, oh my God, I'm getting bullied because this kid gave me a dirty look. You know, there's a difference between tattling and telling, and about reporting. And I think the kids need to, be educated on, the young kids educated on that from early on, that it's okay if, if this behavior is repeated and it makes you feel bad, that you need to report it, and that's not considered tattling. I've dealt with a lot of young kids that have been bullied over and over again, and that's the only reason they didn't say anything, because they didn't want to be a tattletale. They don't really understand the difference at that point. So I think one of the biggest things, like I said before, is education.
Okay, so when you talk about education, is there any way you can do a self-check of yourself, or and this is for either one of you, that maybe you have these tendencies of bullying, and you say, hey, you think this is funny or cool? Is there any things that you know of in education, or you would talk to students and say, hey, maybe you should do a self-check. Maybe you are bullying, you don't even realize it.
Well, when I think about that, again, it's a respect issue, and I can just personalize it a bit. I mean, it's easy for me when I'm out outside of my job, and I'm walking around with my family or whatever, to point out certain people and say, hey, look at this or look at that, and make comments about things that maybe aren't appropriate. And really, that's going to impact my wife. It's going to impact my girls. And so when we talk about education, I think respect does start, for instance, if we're in an educational system in the classroom. And there are going to be people, I mean, they're going to be different, they're going to stand out. It's going to be easy to make judgments about them. I mean, if we're honest about it, we do it every day. But I'm learning more and more as I go through life is that a person is the way they are because of a lot of factors that have led up to who they are. And then, in fact, if you sit down and have a conversation with just about anybody, what you might have perceived as really odd or unusual, or this person's a jerk, or they're a loser, or they talk too loud, or they just want attention, or whatever, there are factors that have led to that. And that can bring about understanding. And that's kind of where I get into the idea of self-worth, that we all have self-worth as humans, and that we need to recognize that our lives are not any more significant than the lives of the people around us. And it's kind of it's a factor of love. I mean, it's really loving other people, and I know that's maybe sounds a little mushy or whatever, but truly, I think that's kind of our calling, is to love and respect other people. And that doesn't mean that you have to be their friend, or you have to associate with them, or that you necessarily are hanging around them, but that you're understanding that a person is the way they are because of a lot of different factors. And it's just small things. So really, each of us needs to do a self-check about even what we think when we view other people. What are we thinking about that? Because our thoughts can come out in a look or an action or in a behavior in some way that impacts the people around us. And just not to go on too long, but I've seen where certain people were kind of shunned. And when I was in school, and I would make an effort to be a friend of that person, by me making an effort to be a friend, other people would start treating that individual with respect too. So it does come down to us a lot. How are we going to treat other people, and our behaviors impact the behaviors of people around us.
Detective Spitz, do you have anything in addition to that?
I'm glad you mentioned, self-check and really respect, because I think respect is huge. And it's not just about bullying. I think it's huge in life in general, because everything that you do in life, showing respect to others will have an effect. Examples of that is, and again, as an officer, I look at things different than a lot of other people, but an example of that is, and pretty much most people can relate to, if I turn around and as an officer I pull somebody over and they're doing 7 or 8 over, they're speeding a little bit, and I decide I'm not sure if I'm going to write this person a ticket or not, and I approach the vehicle and they're extremely disrespectful. I mean, it's obvious at that point. An officer is a human, and if they're kind of teetering between whether they're going to write a ticket or not, and then somebody's disrespectful, that pretty much makes the decision right there. Same can be said about a job. If you have a job and you want a raise, and you're kind of disrespectful to your boss, you're not going to get a raise. If you're a salesman and you go to sell something to somebody and you're disrespectful to them, then you're probably not going to make the sale. Respect is huge. And I think that, if people look at, how should I treat others, based on how I want to be treated myself, that goes a long way. That is a pretty good test, in my opinion, as far as whether or not you may be acting as a bully. I find it kind of interesting also that some of the most respectful people that I come across in my line of work is those that have been in prison before, because they, when they've been in prison, they realize that respect will get them a lot more than being rude or disrespectful to somebody. Because if I make contact with somebody and I know they have a criminal past and they start talking to me, I can almost tell whether or not they've been locked up for a period of time or not just by the way that they speak to me. And as I said, the people that have been in prison before are probably some of the most respectful people, and they've learned, unfortunately the hard way, that
I'm sitting here smiling because I'm thinking, wow, yeah, they learned the hard way. Very good. So if you got a person, and again, this is for Detective Spitz more so than Craig, but they have not did the self-check, and this bullying behavior turns into an abusive behavior. Do you happen to know what are some of the penalties for that? From going from a misdemeanor to a felony type, what kind of charges do you guys bring upon these individuals for this type of behavior?
Well, it's kind of interesting. People have always thought that there was a law against bullying, and actually until just a short time ago there hasn't been a law against bullying. One was just passed, I think last week. Governor Snyder just signed it into law. But what's different about it than what most people view as laws is it's not a law that specifically has a punishment or a penalty that's, basically put right on that. All the law says is that within the next 6 months, the every school district in the state of Michigan has to impose a policy about bullying, and the policy will explain how they will handle bullying. It's going to be really hard for them, I think, to write that policy, because part of the issue they're going to have is bullying is such a broad range of behavior that it's going to be very difficult to show that this is exactly bullying and this isn't. It's just kind of open to interpretation. But as far as law enforcement, the way that we can deal with bullying is there's a lot of different laws on the book that kind of fit what most people think of as a law, as far as something that you can be arrested for and thrown in jail for. And in situations, if we do have to enforce it, and treat it as a criminal act, one of the easiest ways is most governmental jurisdictions have disorderly codes or other laws that could apply. For example, here in East Lansing, some of our disorderly codes, the laws that we could actually, and these are all misdemeanors that we can charge somebody with, up to 90 days in jail, for violating these. These are very broad, which can actually include things, that bullying would encompass. Things like roughly crowd another, knowingly engage in indecent or obscene behavior in public, accost, molest, or otherwise annoy another person, which pretty much covers almost everything. Disturb the peace by being loud and boisterous. Those are some of the local disorderly codes that we could actually use to charge somebody with. In addition, there's also state statutes, laws such as assault and battery, which depending on the severity, can be a misdemeanor or a felony. And for those that aren't too aware of the difference, obviously a misdemeanor is anything that you can go to jail for up to a year. There's also a high court misdemeanor, which is up to 2 years, but we don't need to get into that exactly. That's very rare. And anything that you go to jail for over a year basically is considered a felony. And some of those like felonies. We could even look at like some stalking, if it's aggravated stalking, could go up to a felony. We could even look at bullying sometimes as racial intimidation.
Okay, so the school
there's a lot of
districts are
different
really
laws on the books
creating
that
some
we
kind
could
of
actually
policies to
use if we
expand on
were
these
to
laws,
charge somebody criminally
and I
for
guess
the
every jurisdiction, I'm sure every city, municipality has something similar to what East Lansing has. So I'm just trying to get that point out, because again, if you don't change your behavior and be aware of it, you can be charged criminally. There's stuff out there, but they specifically seem like they're going to be making policies where they can probably do more school suspensions and that kind of stuff. So now I have another question here: is how has this bullying has it changed over the years? And I think for me as an individual, that's what I've seen, mostly in the headlines and the news of things that are going on with the electronic media. So can you talk a little bit about that? And Craig Mr. Previs, he kind of started going that direction, but I want to hear from both of you and how you think bullying has changed over the years. We can start with you. Yeah, Craig, go ahead, and then we'll let Detective Spitz go in.
Sure. Well, I did want to say one thing about LCC is that students with felony convictions are referred to me oftentimes. In addition, we have a judicial affairs, and then we have a behavior intervention team. So I'm currently working with students right now who have crossed the line, possibly in a classroom or in the hallways or in the locker room, and they've been assigned to me to work out some behavior intervention. So in some cases, it's a matter of writing a paper, it's doing community service. They may be on probation for a year or two to make sure that they kind of obey the rules at LCC. So even though I'm not familiar with criminal law, we are involved in making sure that students are respectful to each other. And I've been involved in quite a few cases with public safety and with our the dean's office in the judicial affairs area. As far as cyber bullying, I mean, I am not an internet technology person, but I do send and receive emails every day, and I do see things on the news. And what I've been impacted with is how powerful words are. And it's interesting to me because I grew up without technology, and now it's dropped in my lap. And it seems that words online or through the internet are just as powerful as spoken words face to face. So, and when you send out an email, it's out there forever. Somebody can read it. It can, I don't know, appear out of nowhere. I've sent stuff before, and somebody gets it a month later. I mean, there's some crazy things out there. So I think you have to keep in mind that your words are just as powerful, and maybe even more so through technology than they might be face to face. Because you could say something to a person, and the words are gone. I mean, the sound is gone, but you send something in a written form, and it's there forever. So my challenge would be just to you as we think about this, is realize the impact on people through visual media or written media.
Yep, Detective Spitz, you want to comment on that?
I agree totally. I think that they
Well, I agree totally. I think the biggest change is the cyberbullying, the use of social networking, like Facebook, MySpace, that type of thing, texting, and he made a good point. They stay there forever. Not only do they stay there forever, but if you're in person, you're getting bullied and somebody calls you a name, it's once that's done, it's done. Everyone's on their way and it's over with. You may remember it, but it's pretty much over with. If something is put on Facebook, not only is it there for pretty much forever, but the person that's already feeling bad because of the words that's being bullied, they look at the Facebook page and they see it, and then every time they look at the Facebook page, they see it again. So it's like it's reoccurring over and over again, even though it was only one single post. Not to mention, just like, everybody I'm sure is aware, when they look at Facebook page or MySpace page, people comment on other people's comments. So somebody can post something on somebody's Facebook page, and then, next thing you know, you might have 20, 30 other people that are commenting on it, which is just, it could even be a day, 2 days, a week, a month later, people are still commenting on that one comment. And, I think it's important that people realize that what they put out there is out there for pretty much everybody to see. In addition to, you got to be careful what you put out there. I'll be honest, in my investigations here in, at East Lansing, I use Facebook an awful lot. I would probably venture to say that probably 60 to 70% of all my crimes that I end up solving have something to do with finding something on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, or something that's posted somewhere. I mean, people just like to broadcast what they do and what they feel, and it's just amazing. I mean, anything from a damaging somebody's property report up to a homicide. I've found many things on people's Facebook pages that people just don't seem to have the understanding that what they put out there is open for pretty much everybody to see. And, when it comes to bullying,
I think for me, listening, and I've been teaching at LCC, and I do a lot with electronics and doing online. And I think it's the personal, you're not as personal, you're not up in somebody's face. But on the other side of that is individuals have time to think about what they're going to say and do. I work and deal with a lot of students and doing online classes, and they'll send me stuff, and I'm like, I just want to reply right back and be negative. But I always think about what I'm going to say, and words, how powerful words can be just because of that. And I think it's important. And again, I'm doing this podcast for the benefit of the students who are listening to this. And I want to ask both speakers, if you have one or two things you want to say to them about, the cyberbullying, and that can make a difference in their life. Because these are digital natives. These students are growing up with this technology. I mean, they're holding it in their hand, 3 or 4 years old, having this technology. So it's not going to go away. It's just going to get more and more prevalent for everybody to have electronic devices. And I will ask, what kind of advice would you give them? And we can start with you, Craig, and then.
Sure. Okay, well, I just have one comment, I guess. And that's to really think about what you put online and think about the kinds of communications you have. And I've learned through various hard ways at work by, I'm kind of a aggressive person at times, and kind of like to see justice done. And in the pursuit of justice, I've said things I shouldn't have said without knowing all the facts. And once it's out there, it's out there. And the same with any type of communication. So think before you type or think before you speak. And there's no harm in waiting. Oftentimes our emotions get all fired up and we want the truth out there right away. We want to address the situation right away. But emotions can get in the way of what's best. So that's probably my primary comment.
I would say that if I had
I would say that if I had one comment to make about this, I would recommend that before anything's posted or text, that you obviously really think about what you're going to put out there, and I actually look at it as, would I post this about this person or whatever if I went and showed it to my mother or my father first or my grandmother first, and if you wouldn't go show it to like your father or mother or grandmother before you post it, then chances are you shouldn't be doing it. Because once it gets out there, no matter how much you regret sending it, it's still out there. We get so many subjects that do sexting nowadays, and you know, they put stuff out there, they think it's kind of harmless because I'm just going to send it to my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever, and then next thing you know, their picture's out all over the place because, you know, as you're growing up, relationships change, and the person that you were madly in love with now, all of a sudden, you are having problems with, and you know, are maybe lashing out to hurt one another. So, you know, just before anything is sent
Very good
electronically
advice. I mean, just
or posted on
again, showing it to
Facebook or
anybody
anything,
you think it's being
I would
respectful or
say Facebook.
disrespectful.
If you
At this
were
time, I want to
social
open it
to your
up to the
parents or your
classrooms, and I've
grandparents
kind of
first
given the
before you send it,
instructors a
then
little bit of guidance. But if they have someone that wants to type out a question, they can, or they also have microphones. And what I'm going to do is mute, and at this point I want the instructors to poll their classes and just ask any questions. Again, if you need to unmute, all you do is click over the little microphone and you guys will be live, and we'll sit and address your question to the Mr. Prathers, the counselor, or okay. It's a little difficult for me sitting here wondering, do they have any questions? Maybe no one has any questions. And I'm not sure if anybody's typing anything. So, again, I just want to thank both my guests here, and I appreciate your time for doing this. This is a very serious topic, and I think sometimes we kind of blow stuff off as a society, or we'll say, oh, this is not too serious, just some kids playing around. But it's been around, like Craig said, it's been around forever. And
Can you hear me, Mr. Good. This is a criminal justice class. Bullying and bullying in general was the incident in Ohio where the student, because he was bullied, because we certainly can think of other incidents. Wyoming with the young man who was barbed wired to the fence for the same reason. So our bullying is focused more in sexual orientation, a particular victim, if you will.
you can go ahead and mute your mic. I'll see if Detective Spitz can answer that. He probably will be the best person to have that, and then maybe Mr. Prathers has something. If you can go ahead and mute your mic.
okay, to answer the question, I don't necessarily, personally, I don't see it focused at one group or one type of target. It seems, I mean, as people growing up, you know, if you're different in any way, somebody is going to point that out, and you know, quite often results in bullying. I think you know, you mentioned the suicide for the person in Ohio. Actually, it's, you know, it's kind of interesting you mentioned the suicide thing, because the whole law that was just passed here in Michigan, they're actually calling it Matt's Law. and that's based off from an East Lansing high school student that committed suicide, Matt Epling. His father has been very instrumental in getting this law passed. Ever since his son committed suicide, he went and has been just, relentless pursuing to get, something done about trying to stop bullying. And it's that was the focus of his thing, is that his son ended up committing suicide. I'm not exactly sure all the details as far as why, his
And I
son
agree
did
with
what he did.
those statements as well.
But
I think
like in
anytime
my
we
experience, I
perceive
don't really
people as
see
different,
certain
or people that make us
being
uncomfortable,
targeted.
or people
I think
that
it's just, anybody that
maybe accomplish
seems
things
to
that
be
we
different
don't,
than,
or
the person
whatever
doing bullying.
causes us to be uncomfortable, I think that we can target others, individuals. So I don't see it as a particular groups are being targeted more than others.
And another thing I forgot to mention too is a lot of times the person being bullied, the victim, it isn't necessarily even because of something that the person, when they say something that's different, doesn't mean something bad. A lot of times the person that's doing the bullying um, wishes that they were more like the person that they are actually bullying. And it's a way of trying to knock the other person down so they can build themselves up, because they're not comfortable with themselves. So a lot of
Okay, we
times
got another
the
question
person
here, and I
that
think this one is from the other class, and it says,
you say
has
is different,
anyone seen
a lot
somebody
of times
being
the
bullied
person
and not
the
done
bully,
anything
they're
about it?
not
And I guess that's kind of like being a
better than
person,
them. They're
the
just trying to,
victim. You
like I
witnessed
said, knock them down,
somebody
build
being
themselves
bullied
up.
maybe, and you've not said anything. I think that's the essence of his question, and he couldn't hear Mr. Armstrong's question, which was basically, is legislation going towards a certain group or bias? And I'm hoping I'm interpreting that question right. So I'll ask that question for the two speakers. Do you know, have you ever had anybody that come to you and maybe um, thought they might have seen something and not reported it, or what advice would you give to someone who's seen it and maybe not reported, maybe retribution, or they might get caught?
I've only had a personal experience one time when I was a kid, and I remember I was kind of a small kid growing up, and there were a group of 4 or 5 people were beating up somebody, and so I, like an idiot, charged in there and said, if you guys want to fight, I'll fight all of you. And it was a crazy spur of the moment thing, but it was interesting is that my boldness running into that situation stopped the whole process. And I'm not saying that was a very smart thing to do, but I do think that when we walk past something, it's probably selfishness in a way. And maybe you can relate to this if someone's stopped along the highway and they're struggling trying to change a flat tire, and we have our agenda, and our agenda is to get from point A to point B. Even though it's not a bullying situation, I think we can relate to that my agenda is kind of first. And I can't think of specific bullying situations where I know a person walking away, but we've seen it on the news. It can be a downtown Detroit and somebody's getting beat up and 100 people walk by and this person's laying there harmed or wounded and nobody does anything. So I'm not sure what that's all about. I don't fully understand that, but it happens. And really it's a matter of saying, okay, am I first or is this other person first? Do I really care about my fellow man? And it's important to get involved, bottom line, and not to put yourself in a dangerous situation, but it's important to act on behalf of other people, step out of our comfort zone. Possibly, sometimes it can put ourselves in danger, or we could be ridiculed or whatever, but you can't let it go.
I agree. I mean, it's easy to say that you should get involved, but it's a lot harder to do, because you are possibly putting yourself in harm's way. And by no means am I saying that you shouldn't get involved, um, but we get a lot of people that just don't want to take a chance of getting themselves either becoming the target of the ridicule or becoming, physically assaulted themselves. So I would say, unfortunately, it's more the norm that people look the other way than to actually get involved. And I think that's not just with bullying. That's just, unfortunately, the way that this civilization's starting to trend towards. Because, it's sad, but even in some of the classes that they teach about for women about rape, they teach them to sometimes some classes you actually teach the ladies to scream fire rather than screaming rape, because fire would affect other people and they're worried about themselves, where rape is just affecting that one person. And unfortunately a lot of people now in today's world just they're too focused on themselves. And but people need to realize that there are other ways. You don't have to all run right out there to try to stop something. There's other ways to get involved and try to stop it too. You can even, I had one situation where a child was getting bullied, and I think it was pretty smart thinking on this child's part. Rather than telling the person to stop bullying him, he screamed to the guy that was bullying, "Hey, you better stop, the principal's coming." And the principal was nowhere around. He knew that the person that hollered that knew that the principal wasn't around, but it was a way to stop it and at the same time not really put himself in any danger, make him look like he was actually looking out for the guy. And maybe he could have went about it a different way, but I think it was, he was scared to do anything else other than that, but he still made a difference by, making that comment. And it did stop the bullying at that point in time. I don't know if after that, if he went and talked to
Very interesting. My last question to either one of you, if you think you have been bullied,
kind of thinking outside the
what
box.
I don't know if you even have any resources, any recommendations you can make to the group, who's thinking about it. Maybe they haven't reported this. What can they do?
At the same time.
Okay, well, at Lansing Community College, if you are observing something that doesn't seem correct, whether it's, and this is for the instructors as well, if a student's behaving in a particular way that doesn't seem appropriate, or there's behaviors that seem they could be on the verge of harmful, or whatever you observe, I think it's important to go to public safety. And the reason for that is that we're discovering that usually some of these behaviors are not in isolation, and that a person that keeps popping up, in the classroom, or other students who are noticing behaviors, if we go to public safety, there's incident reports, and many times we're discovering that one student may have had 3 or 4 or 5 contacts with public safety. And then if the issues are severe enough or of great concern, we have a behavior intervention team. And a lot of this has come from things like shootings at Virginia Tech and another shooting at Virginia Tech most recently. And we want to be on top of stuff. We want to know where students are at. We want to protect students. We want faculty, staff, and students to be safe. So if don't consider it, tattletaling, I guess, at a very basic, simple way of putting it, but don't consider it inappropriate to go to public safety and say, I have some concerns. I've noticed this behavior. And public safety really wants to get involved in this kind of stuff. So I'm saying that to all the students in the class, your safety is important, other people's safety is important, and things do happen. And I'm going to tell you one quick thing. I remember I was going to leave the building one way after work, and I always go a particular direction. And something inside of me just said, go the other way, Craig. And I turned around and I walked down the hall the other way. And then I heard a discussion. It was in the parking ramp, and something didn't feel right. And I actually started walking towards this girl, and I said, how's it going, and because I just felt I needed to that something wasn't right. And this guy was going to force her in a car. This was in the parking ramp. And I just feel like there's some divine intervention in there that led me that direction to stop this situation. So what I'm saying is that if you have a gut level feeling that something isn't right, it might not be right, talk to public safety. They can check things out, and that would be your responsibility, and it's a way to do it anonymously, and you may save a negative situation from occurring.
I agree totally. It's very important to report, what you think is happening, or, what you see, what you hear, and that's, I want to make a comment about, this bullying isn't just related to school. That's what the focus is on. The focus is on, middle school, high school. That's whenever you see the commercials, that's what they look at is this, bullying occurs in school. Well, it occurs throughout your life. There are bosses that become bullies. There are individuals that maybe neighbors that become bullies. There's people that, you see it all the time. People make comment, if you don't stop doing this, I'll get an attorney and I'll sue you. I mean, just different people that use different techniques to try to bully people. It's not something that just occurs when you're in high school or middle school. It actually occurs throughout your life. And it's important in any of those situations to mention it to somebody, to let somebody know that can maybe do something about it. In addition to that, I think it's important for people to realize that there are processes and there are steps to be taken, to try to stop the behavior, but you can't expect something to happen overnight. We get a lot of reports where somebody's upset about, they come to us and say, well, this person is bullying me, and they explain the situation. Well, they've never reported it before. So now we got the first time it's being reported, even though it may have happened 20 times, it makes it difficult for us to be able to do anything because those other 19 times it was never reported. So it is important to report it and report each time it occurs, because I'll be honest with everybody, it's probably not going to...
Great, I appreciate that. And we're just about out of time, so I wanted to make sure I don't have any last questions from any of the classes, and I want to thank both of you gentlemen for participating in this, and I also want to thank the classes and the instructors for allowing their students to be a part of this podcast. This is something new that we're trying here at LCC, and all of you are being a part of this innovative, cutting-edge technology that we're going to roll out. And again, some of you have been stretched a little more than others, and I appreciate that. And with that said and done, I don't have anything else, anything from anyone in the audience, and I'll wait them all 30 seconds here, or either guest speakers, and if not, I'm just going to sign us off, and I want to tell everyone to have a good day, and I appreciate your time and effort in making this a wonderful podcast. It's very cool. I like it. It's been great.